Welcome to the Explore Real Estate Show. I am James Boslaw, your Fredericksburg Area Realtor and vacation rental investor. And this show is all about real estate in the Fredericksburg area, the Fawn Lake community, and the vacation rental space. I help people buy and sell homes because I believe that everyone should grow their wealth as they live in or own a home that they love. I also believe that you should feel confident when you are buying or selling a home, and confidence comes when you are well educated and informed, and that's what this show is all about. Enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Explore Real Estate Show, where in today's episode, I am going to break down the NAR lawsuit, the proposed settlement, which has been approved, and ultimately what changes are going to be made here in the Fredericksburg area in the middle of August. So let's dive into today's episode. Undoubtedly, if you're watching this, you have seen a lot of headlines, probably online, stating a lot of different things around this National Association of Realtors lawsuit. It involves commissions with real estate agents. There's a few more things that it touches on, but really its focus is on commissions for real estate agents. And there is so much confusion around what the lawsuit is about, what has been proposed, and ultimately what changes are going to be made. So I just want to take this episode to clarify everything. There's a lot of articles out there that are almost laughable for us agents on how far off they really are from the truth. Headlines can be so misleading. I know you know that. A lot of people are writing stuff just to get clicks. But what I want to do is I want to cut through the noise, and I want to clarify what in the world is actually going on. So first off, let me just start by saying that we're going to have different aspects of today's episode. The first aspect of our episode is going to be how current commission is mostly handled. When I say mostly, there is sort of a norm, but things can always be negotiated. So we'll talk about how commissions are handled right now. We'll talk about the proposed lawsuit and the proposed settlement that has been approved. So we'll get to that. And then what we'll talk about is the most important thing, which is what does that really mean as far as changes, especially for our area in the middle of August, just a few months away. So let's dive into today's episode by starting off with how does commission currently work right now in the real estate market, especially for the Fredericksburg area. And so I'm going to dive right into that right now. This is also true mostly nationwide, but I'm going to speak mainly to the Fredericksburg area. When I go and I talk to a seller who's looking to sell their home, I go over everything about their house, the value of their home, we talk about what conveys, what doesn't conveys, the amount of time it should be in the market, what it should sell for. But obviously we go over the cost of selling a home. Now, most sellers, when they're talking to a listing agent, they come up with a commission that is usually split between the listing agent, the agent who's selling the home, and the buyer's agent. I say normal because anything can be negotiated, but the normal percentages for a commission are typically somewhere between 5 and 6%. So for the sake of me explaining things, let's just go ahead and say that this is a 6% cost for commissions for the seller when they're selling the home. That 6% actually goes to the listing agent, the agent who's selling the home. And that listing agent takes that 6% and they actually cooperate or provide some of that percent to the buyer's agent. Most of the time, if it's a 6% commission, the listing agent is taking 3% and giving it to the buyer's agent. So the seller gives the listing agent 6%. The listing agent takes that 6%, they keep 3%, and then the other 3% goes towards the buyer's agent commission. And that is what's normal in our area. Now, one might ask, why in the world would a seller be paying for the buyer's agent's commission? Because even though it comes from the listing agent gets that from the seller. And I want to go ahead and take a moment to answer that question. The number one obstacle for a buyer purchasing a home is coming up with the down payment. Now, down payments, they do vary depending on the loan type. So it could be that there's a down payment with 3% down. There could be a down payment with 5% down. Many folks like 10, 20% down. There are different types of loans out there. However, The number one obstacle for a buyer in purchasing a home is coming up with that down payment. Usually it's a percentage of the sales price of a home, but that's not the only cost that a buyer has to come up with. The buyer, especially in this market, is expected to also cover their own closing costs. And closing costs are typically about 3% of the sales price of a home. So a buyer is expected to come up with a down payment and cover their closing costs. And that is usually a large sum of money, which makes it a little bit easier for the buyer to acquire a home if the seller is providing a commission to the listing agent so that the listing agent can cooperate and provide some of that to the buyer's agent. Now, you do not have to do that. Right now, currently, if you are a seller, you do not have to provide a full 6% commission. Most of the time, that's the case. I've never had any other deal that was done outside of that type of structure where it was a 5 or 6% listing that's given to the listing agent and split with the buyer's agent. Like, that is the norm in our area. What this lawsuit is all about is educating our sellers that they do not have to provide a full commission that gets split to the buyer's agent. Also, it's important for buyers to understand that it's not guaranteed that the seller will cover the buyer's agent's commission. That's what this lawsuit is all about. It's who's paying whom, and let's educate the sellers and the buyers on what the responsibilities are of the agent and how they're getting compensated. That's what the lawsuit is all about. But the whole reason for a seller providing a full commission to a listing agent so that the listing agent can split it with the buyer's agent really helps make it easier for a buyer to acquire a home. And for sellers who want to sell their home, normally that's what you want. You want to remove obstacles for buyers to come buy your home as long as they're offering the right price for it. And so that's what this whole chaos, all this lawsuit, all that is all about, making sure that sellers and buyers are educated on what it looks like to compensate agents. Now, even though I told you that the 5 to 6% is the norm in our area, it's always been something that can be negotiated. There is never a minimum requirement that is expected of a seller to provide to the listing agent, and there's no requirement for a listing agent to provide or cooperate with the buyer's agent. So really, not much is going to change. But this is what will change based on the proposed settlement. And NAR has said, okay, listen, we are going to go ahead and we are going to remove the requirement in the MLS that states that we have to show the buyer's agent how much the listing agent is willing to cooperate or provide commission to the buyer's agent. We are going to go ahead and remove that field from the MLS, the multiple listing service. That's the proposal that's being given out by the National Association of Realtors with a lot of money. That's the proposal that's been thrown out. Now, that proposal has been approved, and it is not finalized, but it has been approved and still waiting on some legal actions to solidify that. But what that means is this. What does this really mean when it comes to the changes that are going to be made in the Fredericksburg area in the coming months? Really, it's the middle of August. What that means is right now, if I go into the multiple listing service as an agent, the MLS, I will no longer be able to see if or how much the listing agent is willing to cooperate or provide commission to the buyer's agent. It might be as simple as me making a phone call before I write an offer and saying, hey, how much are you willing to cooperate with myself as the buyer's agent? What's the commission that is being offered if I bring a buyer? And they will be able to go ahead and answer that question because it can be negotiated. So now, instead of that being a required field that's put in the MLS, now there's going to probably have to be phone calls and negotiations that are made to find out how much or even if the listing agent is going to cooperate with the buyer's agent. Now, with that being said, I think not much is going to change from how we're currently doing commissions, because there are multiple states that for years now have had this required field in the MLS showing how much the listing agent is willing to provide for the buyer's agent. There has been many states who have had that required field removed for years, just like they're going to do nationwide coming soon and here in the Fredericksburg area in the middle of August. Other states have been doing this for years, and guess what? The seller is still providing a 5 to 6% commission to the listing agent so that the listing agent can cooperate with the buyer's agent. Why are those other states still doing that? Because that is the best way for a seller to make it easy for a buyer to come and purchase their home. Sellers want to remove obstacles for buyers. They want to get strong offers so they can be compensated properly. But most of the time, nearly all the time, from the agents that I've talked to who are doing this in other states, say that the listing agent is cooperating with the buyer's agent and splitting the commission with them. Now, with that being said, we need to educate buyers. If you are a buyer or any buyer out there that is looking to purchase a home, one of the other proposed changes is that before looking at homes, you have to have a signed agreement with your real estate agent who's representing you as the buyer's agent. The reason why there needs to be a signed agreement is because it needs to be explained up front from the buyer's agent to the buyer that if the listing agent is not willing to cooperate or provide a commission to the buyer's agent, then the buyer's agent is still going to have a commission that they're expected to get paid by the buyer. So if a seller says, hey, I'm not going to give 5-6% commission, I'm willing to give 2.5%, maybe 3%, and that can go to you, the listing agent, but I'm not paying for the buyer's agent. They have the right to say that. They have the right to say that now. But what that means is it might be harder for the buyer to come up with a down payment, cover their closing costs, and then on top of that, cover their buyer's agent's commission. So even though that's within the seller's rights, the buyer needs to understand that if the seller is not willing to provide that commission, then their buyer's agent is going to, expect a certain amount of money for their services. And that needs to be agreed upon up front with the buyer before looking at homes. So for me, I would expect my buyer to provide at least 2.5% if the listing agent is not cooperating or providing a commission split. So if the seller or the listing agent is not covering my commission, then from my buyers, I'm going to expect 2.5% of the sales price for my commission. But that conversation with my buyers is going to be had up front just in case the commission is not covered by the seller or cooperated from the listing agent. So those are the two changes that are going to happen in the middle of August. No more required field in the MLS showing how much the listing agent is going to provide to the buyer's agent for their commission. And two, as a buyer's agent, we cannot show homes, we cannot represent buyers unless there's a signed buyer agreement showing that we represent the buyer and explaining to them that commission, if not covered by the seller, will be expected from the buyer. Now, I really don't think much is going to change. And here's my conclusion to all of this. I really, unless there is an absolutely crazy seller's market, which is possible, that is possible, I think that what's going to happen is that sellers are going to continue to provide a large enough commission to the listing agent so that that listing agent can cooperate or split the commission with the buyer's agent so that it will incentivize all the buyers and make it easier for all the buyers who need to come up with that down payment, who need to cover their closing costs, can come and look at the home and make a strong offer to purchase it. So I don't think much is going to change. In other markets that have already made these changes years ago, nothing's changed. And so when all is said and done, what we think is that this is just a lot of noise, that the end result will probably be the same, but there will be an increased amount of education around commissions, because in summary, all commissions can be negotiated. That is something that is between the seller and the listing agent, and between the buyer and the buyer's agent. That can be negotiated. So I'm doing my best to explain what this is all about. Once again, no more percentage of commission for the buyer's agent in the MLS. And also, buyer's agents need to have a signed agreement to work with a buyer. Those two changes will go into effect in the middle of August. So I hope that helps you understand what this is all about. And I know that it's a tough thing for me to explain to people who may not understand. Matter of fact, normally when I record my podcast, I'm able to do so in maybe one take, sometimes two, maybe. But I've actually had to re-record this podcast several times because it is kind of hard to explain to someone who's not accustomed to the commissions and how they work. It is kind of hard to explain or make it simple what that looks like. So if you have more questions, if this doesn't make sense to you, then please contact me so that I can make it more clear. But hopefully this will at least get you an understanding of what is currently the norm, and then just the small little changes that are going to take place soon that ultimately I think will end up continuing on with being the norm, except with a few extra phone calls and negotiations just to clarify how the commissions are being covered. So with that being said, this is a longer episode than normal. I'm sorry about that. I'd like to keep it shorter than this. However, I do want to cut through all the noise and clarify what in the world is going on. So I hope this makes sense for you. As always, if you are listening to this on Apple's podcast, make sure that you follow the show so you can be kept up to date on all of my podcasts when they come out. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe so that you can be kept up to date on all of our episodes as they come out as well. And I look forward to answering any questions that you may have about this local market right now. I will be covering the updated stats in the next couple of weeks. And so stay tuned for more episodes that talk about what's going on in our local market. But until then, I hope you have a great day, a wonderful week, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.